There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Well, that would be me, and we'll be honest, it's not really all year long if I take like 6 weeks off, and then prior to that, I took like 4 weeks off. So at this point, you just get what you get, and I'll bury the lead a little bit. We're just running out the string on this thing. More on that to come at some point in July. Manny Hill and I have something cooking that we'll talk about more. I kind of teased a portion of it on the socials today, at least on the X machine, the Elon Musk machine, at the Ross Brendel. I do believe at some point, for the few of you that have literally been hammering me on when am I recording another one, just letting you know, the days, Manny Hill, I believe, are numbered on this little podcast. But this is number 250 of the soon-to-be award-winning podcast, Minnesota Sports Chat. They'll never take that away from me, Manny, unless I murder my wife and a waiter. No, sorry, ex-wife and a waiter, according to Norm Macdonald. They can't take it away from me.
When you mentioned Elon Musk, I kind of chuckled a little bit because I was thinking about a YouTube video that I sent you maybe about 2 weeks ago or something that I thought was kind of funny. But anyway, you don't have to talk about that on this podcast, but it was funny.
Independent of politics, Manny, and I say this all the time, amongst friends at least, whether you are super far left or super far right, you can still laugh at your own party and not be banished to the depths of hell. There is some really funny stuff on the interweb. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to laugh. You can laugh at this podcast. You can laugh at me if you want. Manny Hill is at Manny Hill 84 on that aforementioned X machine. Jazz 88, Score North, 1500 ESPN. Just a bunch of different stuff that Manny's doing. If you're heading out to Jazz Fest this weekend, Loring Park, right? Loring Park? Where's that at? No.
Mears Park.
Mears Park.
I got been at Mears Park in St. Paul. Yep.
I got the park part right. Say hi to Manny, working with Jazz 88 this upcoming weekend. Okay, for the wrestling nerds out there, Manny, I'm going to tee this up this way, okay? I think about 10% of the people watching or listening to this podcast will get that. No, about 50% will get this. So, Manny Hill, what do you want to talk about? In my best Cody Rhodes. There's a lot that we can talk about, but there's also next to nothing that we can talk about all at the same time, right? Vikings, Judd Zolgad kind of coined this, I think, on Purple Daily a couple days ago. This is actually the real offseason for the Vikings players and coaches. Not a lot happening until they report to training camp. NBA draft, we can speculate, but who knows, by the time I drop this, the Timberwolves may have traded for Kevin Durant or traded away their 17th overall pick. NHL trade deadline right around the corner. The Twins are being the Twins. At times, they look like a really functional baseball team. At times, they look like one of the worst teams in baseball. So I say all that to set it up with this, Manny. What do you want to talk about? Let's just take this in any which direction. Where do you want to start here? Let's have some fun with this.
Yeah, let's start with the Twins because I don't have a lot of Twins takes per se, but I do want to point out how awesome Byron Buxton has been this season. I think that should be, regardless of how you may feel about the Twins, and the season started out really bad, and it looked like a 65-win team, and then they hit a hot streak, and suddenly we looked up, they had the third best record in the American League, and it was like, okay, maybe this is a team that can make some noise. And then Pablo Lopez got hurt, and then it kind of dashed everything, and now they've gone back to looking like a 65-win team. Except Byron Buxton, for the majority of this season, has really, really looked like the player that we all kind of envisioned him to look. I mean, he's been awesome, and I think that is one thing that we should, if we want to take a positive angle on the overall state of the Twins right now, I think that is definitely something that should be acknowledged, because it has been a frustrating decade, really, if you think about it, with Byron Buxton, just trying to find a way for him to get on the field and try to be as healthy as possible. And, knock on wood, obviously, whenever it looks like he's going to be healthy for a while, then something happens. So you just kind of hope that this version of him that we're seeing this season can be maintained for the duration of the season, so that even if this is a team that's only going to win 70 to 75 games, at least if that guy is healthy and continuing to play well, it'll still, I think, make, going to Twins games in late August when they might be out of it, still worth it to go watch him play if he's still healthy and playing this well.
And this is year 11 of Byron Buxton. If you count 2015, don't think that was a full season. I think did he come up late in the year, halfway through the year? I believe he did. You might remember better than I do, Manny.
2015, I remember, I think it was in June, because I remember one of the first few games that he played was the Cavs and the Warriors were playing in the NBA Finals for the first time right around that same time. So I think it was like June of 2015 when he came up.
So you're talking about a player, if you put that into context, say what you will about that season, when I say what I'm going to say next, he's played over 100 games twice. In 2017, he played in 140 games. In 2024, which was last season, he barely cleared that mark. He played in 102 games. And he has been, and this is not his fault, Manny, but he's been the ultimate tease of a player. You see what's in there, you can just never see it on the field. I'll say the same thing about Royce Lewis, albeit last year he finished rather poorly. When he's played this year, he's been rather poor at the plate, but also you see a good ball player in there. I'm going to add another player that's having a really nice season. If you're watching or listening today on Friday, June 20th, he's actually going to pitch tonight in a pitching matchup that I'm very excited about. The Minnesota Twins got Joe Ryan for 2 months of Nelson Cruz. Joe Ryan is going to be named not the starter of the All-Star game. I suppose there's maybe a chance that could still happen, but he's going to be named to the All-Star team for the first time. In my opinion, he should have been named to the All-Star team last season before he got injured. Remember, he was injured late in the season. Joe Ryan is having a really nice season, and I don't know where the Twins are headed in the next 6 weeks, Manny. I can buy that this team is 5-10 games over 500 in 4 to 6 weeks, and you're talking about they're not going to be big buyers because I don't think ownership will allow them. But I do believe if they could buy and they're in the mix, they'll attempt to do something. I don't know what it'll be. Probably a bullpen arm or a 4th or 5th starter, nothing earth-shattering. But if we are heading to a sell-off, I believe that Joe Ryan becomes priority number 1, eventually locking down, because even bad teams need good starting pitchers. You absolutely need it. And the rationale for signing Joe Ryan, even though it's going to cost you more than likely a lot of money at some point, by the time you pay him and his money starts kicking in, the Pablo Lopez money you just handed out will start coming to an end if that's something you worry about. I would also say it's Major League Baseball. You don't really have to worry about that because there's no salary cap. But a lot of that, I think, has to do with ownership, how much money they'll put into starting pitching, how much money they'll put into players, and we just don't know that at this point. There is a case, and the case has been brought to me that Joe Ryan's a player you could look to trade. And I get that. I would hear that. I think when you have a season that falls short of expectations, I think this will sound bad. I think a lot of casual fans would say, well, what did you expect to happen? I looked at this team in the offseason and said, well, I would put it back to you and say, well, who do you want them to sign? They're waiting on this young core. There's really not many big free agents that they would bring in. It would come at the expense of a young player you wanted to see. The argument to spend money to me made no real sense unless it was on a starting pitcher, because most of your lineup, whether it proves to be right or wrong, they thought they had it, other than, maybe Ty France here and there. But you weren't going to try and replace Trevor Larnach. At the time, you probably weren't going to try and replace Edouard Julien. You weren't going to go out and get a replacement to take at bats away from Royce Lewis. You weren't going to go out and get a replacement to take at bats away from Carlos Correa. You weren't going to get a replacement to take at bats away from Byron Buxton. You thought you were safe at catcher. So what I'm getting at here, Manny, I'm really talking in circles. I know that. Welcome to the podcast, by the way, for those who listen. They know I do that. There's a lot of things here for the Minnesota Twins to solve, whether this team turns it around or doesn't turn it around. If you're heading for a great sell-off at 2025, this is the list that I've come up with in my head, Manny. All will yield you different players in return or different types of return. Harrison Bader, for sure, on a one-year deal. I think he might have a player option, but movable, attractive to some teams.
Yep.
Ty France, movable, attractive to some teams. He is the exact reason why you sign players like him for $1 million. If the season falls short of expectations, you flip him for a prospect and see what happens. Danny Coulomb has been fantastic when he's played. Chris Paddock, Willie Castro, a buddy floated to me, maybe even Ryan Jeffers. Then you get into the other category. Then you get into the, well, if we really think we're kind of resetting this thing and we're not going anywhere anytime soon, that's the Joe Ryans. That's the maybe do you listen on the Byron Buxtons? Do you listen on Carlos Correa? The one that I think, Manny, if we get to a great sell-off of 2025, the name that I think the Twins will absolutely look to move that will get them the most in return would be Johan Duran. And I know a lot of fans won't love that, but I do think that that would be the right move. You're not going to pay him when he hits free agency. He still has a little bit of club control left. So if you're going to move a player and get a decent return for that, maybe won't help you this year, might not even help you next year, but in the context of good prospects that you think can help you down the road, the guy who you're going to be able to trade this deadline that would get you that would be Duran. Nobody else is. I'm not saying like you wouldn't trade Harrison Bader and 4 years from now you have a flame-throwing reliever that you got in that trade. I'm not saying that that can't happen. I'm just saying the percentages are greater that you're going to get that with a Duran trade than moving Ty France or Harrison Bader.
Don't you feel like if you get to a point, and you've probably already kind of said this with what you said anyway, but don't you feel like if you're getting to the point where you are thinking about trading off, you know, a Duran or a Joe Ryan, that you're just you at that point you need to start really selling off everybody?
Yeah, well, that's kind of I think the sell-off is twofold. The sell-off is players that you know you're not re-signing more than likely at the end of the year, right? So that is your Harrison Bader, probably not coming back next year. Yep. Ty France has probably played his way out of the Twins if he's healthy. So that's Harrison Bader, Ty France, Danny Coulomb, Willie Castro, all players that are probably not coming back next year. Or if you really wanted them, Manny, candidly, you could re-sign in free agency.
But
so
I'm talking about a guy like, you kind of mentioned him already. It's Carlos Correa.
Correct.
Because and that's a guy that's got multiple years left on his deal. So, go ahead.
To me, the sell-off is twofold, Manny. These are the guys we're getting rid of because this season fell short of expectations. Then comes that next wave of, are we listening on Carlos Correa? Are we listening on Byron Buxton? Would we move Joe Ryan for the right package? If he was healthy, would you have moved Pablo Lopez for the right package? That's the second part of the discussion, is where does the front office feel this team is? Do they feel if they brought back all those guys that I just said, they were more healthy next year, players progressed, and they found a few supplemental players in free agency, would we be a division contending, World Series contending team next year? If they don't believe that, independent of who the owners are, then I think you're at the point of really tearing it down and committing to being a 60 to 70 win baseball team and building it back up. Because one of the ways to do that, as we all know, is to get rid of your best players. That's going to alienate fans that are already alienated. But Manny, that doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. So,
right. Well, you're probably thinking about changing the manager as well at that
correct.
point.
Yep, he would be the fall guy at the end of the season, probably. But a lot of this, Manny, we're talking about this today. On July 20th, we could be talking about a team that's 5 games out of first place. It's a weird sport. We've seen it. Do I believe that that's going to happen? I don't. I've kind of talked myself off this team a little bit. At the beginning of the year, I was bullish that they're going to be fine. Wasn't convinced that they would win the division. Thought they could. Definitely thought they would make the playoffs. As bad as June has been, they're still a game out of a wild card spot. So they can still make the playoffs. They still might make the playoffs. So I don't want to bury them yet. But when 3 of your last 4 months have been really, really bad, it's tough to all of a sudden see this thing going really well in July, August, and September.
It's frustrating because you look at this roster as a whole, and it, to a degree, I mean, you look at, and obviously Lopez getting hurt and being out for 3 months or however the hell long he's going to be gone. That's a backbreaker. That really hurts because he's been really good this year. He's had kind of, looked like he was having a bounce back year after kind of having a fallback year last year after being really, really good in 2023. So that was devastating. But when you look at what they have with Lopez, with Ryan, as at kind of the forefront of your rotation, you've got some bullpen arms that are pretty good. Obviously, your closer is fantastic. This is why it's so frustrating because Buxton's having a great year. You found something. You somehow found something as your second baseman with Cody Clemens. I don't know how long this is going to hold up with him, but he's been pretty good.
It's lasted longer than I thought it would last, and I'm here for every second of it. Good for him. And Minnesota fans talk about this all the time. Oh, this player got away, and look how good they became. We're now hearing about it with Brent Rooker. By the way, I'm happy for Brent Rooker. He didn't just flop at Minnesota. He went to San Diego and flopped. Okay, so that's not just the Twins. I'm happy for players like that. Baseball, more so than others, Manny, tends to sometimes be a sport where players have to go to a second and third stop before they figure it out. I'm not saying it's going to happen with Cody Clemens. I don't really believe it's going to happen with Cody Clemens, but there's nothing that says at this point next year Cody Clemens isn't your everyday player at second baseman or not playing every day in some way, shape, or form, perhaps even assuming the Willie Castro role. And all it took was a waiver, I think a cash, basically, is that a cash claim or a cash trade? I can't even remember. That's how nondescript the Cody Clemens pickup was. I think it was for cash, right? They traded him for cash. It might have been. So you all call the pull ads cheap. They gave money to the team MVP, Cody Clemens. So I think what you were kind of hitting on, Manny, not to cut you off, is what is still kind of tantalizing about this team. Call me wrong, and maybe at the end of the day, they just aren't good. But they have good players. At least to the eye test, they have good players. So they've got to find a way to, we battled this with Buxton forever, for a decade, up until now, it appears. But they got to figure out what is going to be, what is Royce Lewis going to be? I mean, because we have seen it's been the exact same thing that we saw with Buxton, where when he's healthy, he's really, really good. But just keeping him on the field is just it's like the biggest challenge. And now it's like, he's getting to the point now. Royce is what? He's 26. Yeah. He's not the 22, 23-year-old that came up a couple of years ago that, we were still really holding out hope for. You start to wonder now, is this going to be who he is? But at the same time, we were thinking that with Brian Buxton at 26, 27 years old. And now here he is at 31 playing the best baseball of his life. But not to be negative, though, Manny, every time Buxton is running in the outfield or running around the bases, don't you automatically assume that he's going to get injured? Yeah, every time. And it's not his fault. Not his fault, but you just do. Well, and it's going to be the same thing with Royce Lewis. Every time, correct. When he comes back, whenever that is, when he comes back, anytime I see him running to first base, I'm going to be like, is that hamstring going to be okay? Same with C4. I mean, we talk about the team seemingly as good players. Why aren't they better than, what are they, 37 and 37 right around there as we record this? Why aren't they better? Well, their three best players never play. And by never play, they never play together. And they're often always injured. This is the most they've got out of Byron Buxton. He went on the IL for a short stint this year. Correa also went on at the same time. Lewis has missed most of the year. There was a stat earlier this year on one of the Apple TV games, Manny. It's probably up to about 50 games now, but they've played less than 50 games together. That's in over 3 seasons. They're your best players. If they don't play, it's tough to win.
How is Correa not hitting? That's the biggest thing for me that I don't understand, is that because he's still pretty good with the glove. He's
injured, right? Is the breakdown happening that everybody was warned about? Is he just injured?
That's what I'm wondering about. And that's, it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, the Astros look great for letting him go because Pena's been awesome for them. But like now you kind of look back and you think like, okay, that's why the Astros maybe didn't want to pay him, because maybe they saw something that, a lot of the other teams around baseball did not see. And and even the Giants and the Mets, who tried to give Correa a contract, and then that ended up falling through and he ended up coming back to the Twins. I mean, I don't know. I'm hesitant to say that the fall off or the breakdown or whatever is happening with Correa. I'm hesitant to say that yet, but if we don't get a stretch later on this season where he turns it up a little bit offensively, that's going to be a real concern, because he can still field. He's still a pretty good defensive shortstop, but if the
ironically,
what are
Manny,
paying $30+ million a year for, all due respect, like a Christian Guzman, basically, like a guy who's good in the field but can't really hit that well.
Ironically, his best stretch at the plate came slightly after coming off of the concussion protocol list. And my first thought, Sam Buxton's been really well too. My first thought for both of those guys, does the rest help them? Are we getting to a point where Carlos Correa needs to only play 5 out of every 7 games? Tough pill to swallow when you're paying somebody $30+ million for a guy, Manny, that I eventually believe is going to wind up at second base or third base. I think eventually they're going to have to move him off a short. He's still a great defender. I mean, I haven't checked his numbers.
Really good with the glove, yeah.
I haven't checked his numbers in the last couple weeks to see where he grades out, but he still makes throws and plays that only a handful of shortstops can make. He's had a few bad errors this year, but so does every ball player. I just don't know what to make. You're getting to a pivotal point with the Twins, but I'll say this, and maybe we leave it here for the Twins. A sell-off is easy for Derek Falvey. It's easy. Like, he just knows, okay, here are the 4 or 5 players for sure that I'm trading. Joe Ryan, Duran, maybe even Griffin Jacks, Carlos Correa. Maybe these are guys I listen on, right? The sell-off is easy. That's easy. It's easier of a decision. If they're 5 or 10 games over and in the mix for a wild card, or in the wild card and, 5 to 7 games back of the division on July 31st, the buying part, I feel bad for him. I really do. He's making good money. I don't feel that bad. I'm just
because the fans are going to expect him to go out and be in the buyer's market, and then when they don't do anything, the fans with the pitchforks are going to be waiting outside Target Field.
And this year, I would say, if he wanted to make a splash or just even a couple nice moves, again, the Trevor Malley thing didn't work out, or Tyler Malley didn't work out, but I applaud him for trying. Okay. That trade deadline, they were very active. Everyone blew up. Nothing worked, but I give them credit for trying. Even if he wanted to do that this year, I don't think ownership will allow that if they have to take on a lot of money. I don't think the poll ads are going to tell him not to acquire players. I think the poll ads are basically going to do what they said in the offseason. You can bring in X amount of players if you want, but you got to balance the payroll. Now, this time, trade deadline during the season, they may say, okay, you have a little bit of a wiggle room. But I don't think I'm just going to make this up. It won't be him. But it's not going to be to go get somebody like a Justin Verlander. It's going to be to go get somebody like a Jose Quintana. Right. Somebody where you can, would for this team would still be helpful. But I feel bad for him in that sense. If he wants to buy, he's going to be a moderate buyer at best, because that's all he's allowed to do. If he wants to sell, he'll have a lot to sell. It just depends on how much he wants to sell.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things to be critical of Derek Falvey during his tenure. I mean, it's been almost a decade now since him and Thad Levine got here, and obviously Thad has moved on.
Isn't that incredible, by the way?
It's incredible how time, as you get older, how much quicker time goes by, because you just look up and. But
by the way, Manny, overall, He's had misses. He's had bad
Oh
ones.
yeah. Well,
By and large, I think he's done a pretty damn good job.
Yeah, I think it's
A C plus, B minus.
Yeah, I
Somewhere
think
around there.
where they have had their shortcomings has just been, and a lot of it, I don't know how much of it you can really attribute to it being their fault, is just injuries. I mean, their cornerstone players, or the guys who were viewed as being their cornerstone players as a core, just can't stay healthy. I mean, Buxton, we talked about it ad nauseum, just the inability to stay healthy. That's been a tough break for everybody. Now it's Royce Lewis. Even back, when Miguel Sano was viewed as kind of a cornerstone piece of this team, he just, now in his case, it might have been for other reasons, just not being good enough shape, not having the dedication, whatever you may want to question on him with that. But
did we get the annual Miguel Sano story this year that he's in the best shape of his life? Did we get that again this year? I think, is this the first year in 10 years we didn't get the Miguel Sano's in the best shape of his life spring training story?
Seriously asking, is he playing anywhere?
I think he's playing. Isn't he in like Panama or Mexico or something? I'm almost positive he is. Yeah. That's one of my favorite. That's the true sign of spring and summer. The Miguel Sano's in the best shape of his life story.
Yeah. And, but at the same time, I think the pitching stuff has been kind of a mixed bag. I think if that's where you want to be a critic of Derek Falvey's tenure, I think it's in the pitching department. But like when you make a move to get somebody like Joe Ryan, that's a feather that he can put in his cap.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even, making the trade for Pablo Lopez, it was tough to give up Luis Ariz, but
that's been a win. Even last
year, he's been a good pitcher. Last year he wasn't great, but 2 out of 3 seasons that he's been here now, obviously he's got the injury now, but before he got hurt this year, he was pitching great. So
Bailey Ober, likely a win. That's one of a win in the standpoint of he's a guy. Okay. Sim, a guy that they identified. Hopefully they get something out of him. But what's tough, Manny, and what you were just talking about, and I didn't expect to talk 30 minutes of Twins, but this is great because, as you know, baseball is one of my loves. Going into the year, we heard about how great the Twins pitching depth was. And, I guess it's all how you phrase it. They do have good depth. There are 7 or 8 guys that are starter level pitchers, but 5 of the 7 are just meh, right? They're okay. Mm-hmm. And when you lose 2 of those guys at one time, like they did with Pablo Lopez, then Zebby Matthews, who was the replacement, maybe because they didn't get what they wanted out of Sim, he was also sent down. Woods Richardson.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fine, but yeah, they get credit for saying, okay, Joe Ryan, we know that guy is good. We think he's going to be even better. If you want Nelson Cruz, that's what you have to give us. You get credit for getting Pablo Lopez and getting him here.
But then when you make a trade for somebody like Chris Paddock, and you don't really
correct,
maybe you didn't do your due diligence on like the health of his arm when you initially traded for him, and then and now
Malley.
and Tyler Malley, and who was the reliever that they traded? Sam Dyson. They didn't really do their due diligence on the health of his arm.
Remember, Topa showed up and didn't pitch last year till like the final 2 weeks in September. So
yeah.
So some of that stuff.
Yeah. So I think if there's room to criticize Derek Falvey, I think it's been in the pitching department, because I think at best it's been kind of a mixed bag. They've done some good things. They've found some good pieces with Ryan, with Ober, trading for Lopez. But when you look at some of the misses, those have been the problem. Is the misses in the pitching department have been devastating because they haven't had enough on the roster to sort of compensate for that. And so that's why they're kind of where they're at right now, as just sort of stuck in this middle ground of mediocrity. I mean, last year was a tough year for the Twins from a PR standpoint, but what they go 82-80? It wasn't like they had this.
Right.
It's not like they had a 100 loss season, but if you talk to the fan base, the fans all acted like they lost 100 games and were one of the worst teams in baseball. But they're kind of stuck in this spot of mediocrity, and it's hard to really tell which direction they should go in, because it's like when you're mediocre, you want to make some moves to bring in guys to try and make yourself significantly better. But to your point, is the ownership going to allow them to do that? Right now, it doesn't look like they're going to. But there's enough pieces here who are not like old players that make you think, well, you don't want to tear this thing down yet, because you still got some really good pieces here. So I don't know. They're in a tough spot.
So on the fan part, very quickly, the fans would tell you that because remember at the trade deadline, you did nothing but go out and get Stamment or Dumont, who why am I blanking? The kid from the Royals that they nabbed last year, and then he was of course DFA'd like a month later, and then you had the historic collapse in September where you went from being a handful of games up to then completely missing the playoffs, not even whiffing on the division, but the wild card as well. The crossroads part that you were kind of alluding to, that's what I think I started this conversation off with 25 minutes ago. You either need to decide, okay, are we just going to get rid of the guys who have 1 year or the final months of their 1 year deal left, and then we'll shuffle the chairs on the deck of the Titanic in the offseason and see if we can come back and do it better next year? Or is it truly the moment where you say, okay, we've not gotten out of this team what we wanted to for the last 2 seasons. Let's do a total sell-off. Maybe be a 70-ish win team next year with a few pieces. Joe Ryan's probably still here. Pablo Lopez is still here. Maybe you surprise a bit. And then our new window opens up 2027 and beyond. I'm starting to lean that way because, again, that's easier for a general manager to do when his hand is tied behind his back at this moment. And by the way, the general manager will probably have his job when there's new ownership. It's also not guaranteed that the new owner will keep him around very long. So he's going to want to be able to sell a plan to new ownership. And this sounds bad, but sometimes I think the plan of, hey, we intentionally are tearing this down to build it back up is easier to sell to a new owner than we're just going to go for it. And then it blows up and you're out of a job anyways.
The other thing that I think needs to start happening with this organization, and it's hard to say this with baseball because when it comes to the draft, it's a little different than, the NFL or the NBA draft, where you're kind of looking for more immediate impact players. We're expecting, young players that you draft in those leagues to step in a little bit more, make an impact a little earlier. But when you look back at the last deck, I mean, let's go all the way back to Byron Buxton getting drafted in 2012. So Buxton, I think, Buxton's playing good now, and I think you just take it for what it is. But
I'll weigh in here really quickly on Buxton. If we're going to grade these guys on, are you going to do the first round picks?
Yeah, I'm just running off everybody since Byron Buxton, basically.
Okay, if we're going to grade on did you hit, I think MLB standards, it kind of comes with, you have to look at it a little bit in context.
Yes.
I would say that Byron Buxton, as a first round pick, where it's a high fail ratio, if you get to the majors and even play a little bit, to a degree,
it's a hit.
That's it. That's a hit. That's a good job. I would give them a hit for Byron Buxton, but it's not a triple. It might not even be a double. It's a solid base hit back up the middle.
Yeah. And so the rest of the way, so after Buxton, you go, I guess, Barrios, I guess technically was a first round pick. He was a 32nd pick.
Same draft, right? He was a compensation
2012. Pick. Yep. Luke Bard. Okay. Cole Stewart. Nope. Nick Gordon. Yep. Nick Gordon played a little bit and was kind of an okay player for a little bit, but
he was just DFA'd earlier this year from somebody, right? So to a degree, a hit. He's a player, but again, he's you know what he is? He is a hit by pitch. He's a hit by pitch on first base.
You hit a ground ball to short, and the shortstop kicked the ball, and you got on base.
Where's my guy Kayla Chiave, or because he's out of baseball already?
I mean,
I think you'll get to him in a couple of years here.
Yeah. So after Nick Gordon, it's Tyler J. My goodness. Alex Kirilloff, who I think we all had high hopes for, but just again, he got hit by the injury bug, and just after. Was it 2 years ago now that he retired, or after 2023 he retired?
He's a Texas leaguer single. That's a bloop. That's a bloop. I mean, they can't. That's one thing you'll give them. You have to say, man. And we've talked about this, they can't be faulted for injury.
Right. They
It's
can't
not
be
like they're
faulted for injury, but it's more devastating when
still sucks. Still
it still
sucks.
sucks, but it's more devastating when you pile on also other guys that were just misses, and again, for every first round pick in baseball that fails, there's a guy that gets drafted in like the 12th round that ends up being a really, really good player for a long time. So there's always, to your point, there's always context, but like you just continue down the list. Okay, Royce Lewis. All right, jury's maybe still out. Brent Rooker, we talked about him. Trevor Larnach. He's here.
Yeah.
He's here.
He's been
he's on the
pretty
team.
solid. He's been pretty solid
solid
this year. Yeah.
Keani Cavaco, is that who you were thinking about?
Yeah. He's out of baseball already. But I think if I remember correctly, when his second team may have tried moving him to like pitcher, but he's already as of last year, he was already at a ball, and he was just drafted 4 or 5 years ago,
2019.
Think about that.
Aaron Sabato.
He's still in the organization, right?
Yeah, but he's 26 now. Chase Petty
traded.
Yep.
For Sonny Gray, right? Was that Sonny Gray?
I think it's Sonny Gray. Yep. Noah
so
Miller.
At the end of the day, that probably worked out in the Twins' favor, even if Petty turns out to be a good ball player.
Noah Miller is in the Dodgers organization. And then now you're getting into guys that, are still, TBA. I mean, Brooks Lee, Walker Jenkins, Charlie Soto and Kalen Culpepper last year. So
and Brooks Lee's been solid again too. I mean, he's up to what, 16 game, 17 game hitting streak. So no, but
the jury's still out on those guys. But I think just this stretch of,
but not one's been a superstar, Manny. Not to cut you off. Not one's a superstar.
That's kind of the point that I'm making is it hasn't been a complete, to use Jim Polad's words, total system failure in first round draft picks in the last 10 years. But you haven't gotten enough, I think, out of that stretch that can really propel your team into serious contender. The fact that none of the guys that were drafted in like that 2016, 17, 18 stretch have given you just another really, 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 really strong piece to your puzzle. The fact that you haven't really gotten that out of any of those guys that's the tough part. And I think that's why they're kind of part of the reason why they're in the position that they're in right now.
Yeah, and they haven't sold a ton, but when you go back to when Falvine first got here, when it was Thad Levine and Derek Falvey, they had the sell-off where they traded 4 or 5 players, got about, 10 to 12 in return. Duran was one of them. That's worked out okay.
Mm-hmm.
Alcala was one of them. Like, he's no longer in the organization. I'm trying to think if anything else came in any of those trades where the players reached the major leagues. Jose Barrios, you got Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson for. At the time, Martin was the more heralded guy in return. Well, now it turns out that it might be Woods Richardson, who is the better Major League Baseball player, but who knows? The jury's still out on him.
Yep.
Boy, Zach Duke was traded that year. There's a name for you, blast from the past. Eddie Escobar was traded. Ryan Presley.
This is going to sound very blunt, but I'm being dead serious when I say this. Ross, they need to make a trade and they need to fleece somebody.
Yeah, you need to rip somebody off.
You need to rip somebody off. You need
another Joe Ryan.
You need to do to somebody what Cincinnati may have done to you in the Tyler Mahle trade.
Yeah.
Like that. You need something like that to work in your favor, it seems like.
And if I see another Spencer Steer or Encarnacion Strand highlight, I'm going to barf. Although Steer has really come back to the pack this year, but he's still an everyday Major League Baseball player. The Reds got 2 everyday ball players for the most part for a guy who showed up and pitched 12 innings for the Twins and then his arm fell off. That's a great deal for the Cincinnati Reds. All right, Manny, what else do you want to talk about? Should we anything quick hitters? Any other teams in town? I don't really want to spend too much time on the Wolves because we simply just don't know what's going to happen in the next handful of days.
I just don't. I have no idea. It's like it would. You know me. I love the NBA. I love the offseason trade talk and rumors and all that stuff. But it's really like until something actually happens, I'm not going to believe a damn thing anybody says.
Well, it's silly season in the NBA. Can I go on a patented Ross rant that I know you'll enjoy, and maybe that's how we'll close this out?
Mm-hmm.
I say this a lot. It's not to do the old, oh wow, I'm so lucky, because it's not one of those. Hear me out when I say this. I make most of my living off of sports. To a small degree, talking about it. To a bigger degree, planning events, herding cats, making schedules, doing all the other stuff that I do at Hubbard Broadcasting and Score North. But most of my paycheck, my income, comes from sports. So I know all that, and I'm still going to say this. I am so tired of these leagues shoving their product down my throat. Mm-hmm. I do not need the NFL on Christmas Day. I do not need to watch the Minnesota Vikings on Christmas Day. I don't need 5 NBA games on NBA. It was kind of cool when you did 2. I didn't agree with it, but it was kind of cool. Now that literally
the max. NBA games on Christmas Day, 3 should be the max.
A bleeping third of the league is too much. They're like, oh, NBA games are so special. No, it's not. The teams play each other 2 to 4 times a year. There's nothing special about it. It's not the only time they're going to play all year. Nothing special about it. NBA.
I have not to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I think that the
I'm getting too worked up.
If the NBA wants to continue to play games on Christmas, which obviously they're going to do, that's never going to stop. I think that they should go the route that the NFL goes with Thanksgiving. You have your specific 2 teams that play on Christmas Day. With the NFL, it's the Cowboys and the Lions. Now, obviously, they added the third game, which is ridiculous. The night game on Thanksgiving, the NFL did, but it's for decades. It's been the Lions and the Cowboys playing somebody each on Thanksgiving Day. I think the NBA should do the same thing. Have it be the Knicks and the Sixers, or the Celtics and maybe the Lakers and the Celtics play every year on Christmas or something like that. Make it appointment television. Make it a traditional thing that everybody expects. Make it appointment television, like you said. But I just, other than that, like and you know me, I'm the biggest NBA guy on the planet. I've grown very annoyed with the fact that they'll play like 5 games on Christmas Day. Because that's just too much. It's just way too much.
Well, here's where I'm going with this, Manny. It's the Viking schedule release was annoying to me. I think every NFL game should be played at noon on Sunday. When I'm president, I'll executive order that. Nobody needs Monday Night Football has so jumped the shark at this point. There's far too many Thursday games. I don't need the Sunday 3:00 game either. That's probably the worst of all the time slates. I hate that Sunday afternoon game. It ruins your late afternoon, and it ruins your evening. Here's where the rant was heading, Manny. I don't need 5 games on NBA or on Christmas of the NBA, and I sure as bleep don't need your draft to go 2 days now into 2 days. I don't need it. Just do your 6-hour marathon in one night. Well, first off, I can't imagine. Okay, I take that back. They're probably good enough. That's why they're doing it. But are people really dropping their lives to watch day 2 of the NBA draft? I would think more people would have watched it when it was just right after round 1 and the first night. I love drafts. Yeah. I will watch it, which is probably why I'm part of the problem. But I will say this, Manny, I'll probably miss a part of it. I'm not going to watch all of it. I'm not going to rush home to watch it. Now, the Wolves, in theory, I think, have the first pick in the second round, so that might be worth monitoring. But I don't need it. Here's a novel concept, NBA. Make your draft move faster and get your 2 stupid rounds done in one night.
They used to do that.
They did until what, 2 years ago? Until that's what I mean, until 2-3 years ago. I don't need more of this. I don't. And I don't need NBA, or I don't need the NFL 7 days a week, which by God they're going to try and do. I mean, every year it gets more egregious. I just don't need it. I don't need it. And I think fans, we will do what we're trained to do. If you were to tell us the NFL is only happening on Sunday, guess what? We would all love it and say this is the greatest thing ever. So it's not like fans are clamoring for more football. We're just being plebes and following along with it and going with it.
Yeah. Well, and that's especially when
I hate it. Stay in your lane, sports. Basketball and by the NBA finals, the game 7 is going to end and the draft is going to start 48 seconds later. I hate that too. Game 7 is the 22nd. The draft is the 25th. Now, I know it's not like the Pacers and Oklahoma City. They're not going to have high picks. They're going to have the last picks of the draft. I get it. And their scouts can still be out scouting. But how dumb is that? It's not even a full week after the season ends. The NHL's no better, by the way. Theirs is about 2 weeks after now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I will say this: if there's a positive to it, it's because and this is where I get a little bit frustrated with the NFL is that the Super Bowl happens in February, early February, or pretty soon before we know it'll be mid-February.
March.
March. And then it's like 2.5 months before the draft, and there's just so much draft speculation and just all of this. Who are they going to take? How did this guy do in the combine? It kind of tends to drag on a little bit. I mean, we got to the NFL draft this year, and I was like, thank God the draft is here, because the previous 3-4 weeks were just a drag. It was a lot. So I tend to appreciate a little bit more that the turnaround from the NBA finals into the draft is a little bit closer, but I do agree with you that it probably should be stretched out a little bit further just to kind of give people some time to breathe, maybe like another week or so.
Or Manny Hill, the draft can be when the draft is. How about the seasons don't take 14 months?
Yeah, there's that.
I mean, that's another way to do it. Every season not named the NFL season, I could argue, is just slightly too long. Major League Baseball's, I love it, but it's definitely too long. You could tell me they're going to 146 games, and I would say, fine, because we want to start the playoffs. We're going to add 2 more teams, and we want to be done by October 20th. Okay, great. NBA, NHL, you can do 60 to 70 games and be fine.
I would love to see the NBA.
The lockout season, Manny, was great.
Yeah. They
was. Played, a 60-game schedule or 50-game schedule? Well, that was great.
There was a couple lockout. Well, 99, the year after Jordan retired the second time.
That was 50, right?
That was 50. The 2011-12, when LeBron won his first ring, that was 66. And then the season after the bubble was 72. I think they should go. If I was up to me, I would shorten the NBA regular season to 72 games, because I think 72 is a good amount of games. I think you can eliminate back-to-backs, so you don't have as many guys doing a lot of the load management stuff. You don't have guys taking games off, things like that. So I think that's a route that they should go. And I think you could probably shorten the regular season by a couple of weeks, and then I think then you can keep the draft in the same spot that it's in and have the finals end in like late May or something. That's my feeling.
You will be in my cabinet, and you and I will do nothing but sit down and figure out. I'm going to run a presidential campaign that says, I'm only here to get rid of your license tabs and fix professional sports. That's it. You can be in the cabinet, Manny, and we'll come up with you know what we'll do, Manny? We'll create a job outside of government, but you still report to me. Has that ever been done?
No,
never. Manny, this may be the last time you're on Minnesota Sports Chat, but do not fret, people and fans of Manny Hill. Manny Hill and I got something cooking. Again, I teased it to a degree with there's another part of it with Thor Nystrom, who may be joining me on a pod to be determined release date of sometime in August. We'll talk about it then. You may be back, Manny. You might not be, but have no fear. We're still together.
We're not going nowhere.
We're not, just maybe a different platform, but we're not going anywhere. Thanks, Manny.
You got it, buddy.
That is Mr. Manny Hill at Manny Hill 84 on the X Machine. I am at the Ross Brendel on the X Machine. We'll do a few more Minnesota Sports Chats before we fold up shop. So make sure you are liking, subscribing, and who knows, maybe I will keep this. I don't know. I change my mind by the day. That'll do it for this edition of Minnesota Sports Chat. We'll talk again real soon.